It's a little chilly this morning.
It's like stepping into a sleeping bag. Those are going away. Sweat is your enemy. 3, 4, 5 hoods that just ball up in the back of your neck. Welcome back to the channel. As promised, here is the layering systems that I use when I go out when it's cold out. What I switch out from September to November hunts, starting with a puffy jacket. This is, in my opinion, a must. Get rid of the Tundra Light, throw in that Tundra Heavy. This is like when you walk up to that glassing point and it's cold and windy and you put this on, it's like stepping into a sleeping bag. That is a must for me. The next must is I'm gonna switch out and get rid of my light pants. These are the Frontier lights. Those are going away, and I'm getting out the regular Frontier pants. These are much warmer pant. They do have the thigh zip ventilation, which allows you to dump that heat when you're hiking up the hills, but then allows you to zip it in and retain all that warmth once you get to your glassing spot. The next thing is we're going to start with base layers, and all of this, these are just examples of what I use. I use a lot of Born Primitive gear. I really like it, but you can mix and match with whatever brand is your favorite. In September, a lot of times I'll use a sun shirt. I'm fair skinned. It's hot. These dry extremely quickly, but they're not very warm. So I'm getting rid of that, and I'm throwing in the Ridgeline base layers. They do make a standard version and a heavy. It's kind of going to be up to you, as if you run on the colder side, you're probably going to want to go for the heavier stuff, or if it's going to be excessively cold, you may want to go for the heavier stuff. I just use the regular Ridgeline for my base layer. If I'm going to do like a really strenuous hike first thing in the morning, I'll throw on just a t-shirt underneath that, so it allows me to adjust my layering system depending on how much output I'm doing. For me, I sweat a lot, and layering is a must. I've got to be able to mix and match my layering system to match my ambient temperature and my output so that I don't sweat. Sweat is your enemy when it's cold out, because once you sweat, that sweat starts to evaporate and cools you down. And usually it's at the most inopportune moments of you've exerted yourself. Now it's time to hold still while you're waiting for the game to get into a position where you can shoot them, and you get cold and now you're shivering, and it's a lot harder to make a good ethical shot that way. Sometimes I'll use the t-shirt, sometimes not. I like a good wicking t-shirt. The other thing about base layers is I prefer merino. However, some people prefer synthetics. The biggest difference is going to be with how they manage moisture. Merino will hold on to the moisture a little bit longer than synthetics, but you will stay a little bit warmer, or you will feel a little bit warmer while they're drying out, where the synthetics will evaporate that moisture a lot quicker. However, you may feel a little bit chilled while it's doing that, and so it kind of is up to you based on how much you sweat and what your preferences are. A lot of people, for higher output hunts, they prefer the synthetics, and they just kind of deal with that little bit of a chill once they get to the spot. But once that water evaporates, then you will start warming back up, and that's where throwing on more layers helps. Or the next thing you're going to want to is some sort of a mid layer. All the companies tend to be putting hoods on every single layer they have these days, and when you do that for late season and now you have 3, 4, 5 layers on, you've got 3, 4, 5 hoods that just ball up in the back of your neck and cause problems, and now you're trying to put a hood on and you can't figure out which hood is the one you're trying to put on, and now it's mixed up with all the other hoods and it just causes a mess. So for my base layers, no hoods. Mid layers, I prefer no hoods. Something like this. This is the Quiver Crew from Born Primitive. There is no hood. I do have the Quiver with the hood. I usually will take that out of my pack. I wear that a lot during archery season and switch it out to the Crew. just so I don't have as many hoods. One of the things that people may not think about, but I really enjoy, is a quality soft shell. This is the one from Born Primitive. I really enjoy it. It's got a windproof layer that helps cut the wind and keep the heat next to your body, keeps you warm. It is a really awesome layer, especially for when I'm not moving hard, but still kind of moving around. I am moving enough to keep warm, but I'm not sitting still, and I need that windproof layer. These are not as loud as, say, a hard shell, which is also windproof, but it's not as loud, so I really like using that in the late season, and it adds that extra layer. On top of that all, we're gonna wanna have a quality hard shell. This is the Mission Flex from Born Primitive. I've got both the pants and the jacket. They're both great. Like I said, it cuts out the wind, and that's the biggest thing you're trying to do. It also creates another layer in your layering system, and each layer kind of creates a microclimate between those layers, so it traps the air next to your body. Your body warms up those layers of air, and if you can keep that from dissipating, you're going to stay warmer. So even if you have a puffy or whatever, if throwing on a shell just creates another layer in the system and helps you stay warmer. Granted, the shells are a little bit more noisy, which is why us as archery hunters tend to avoid them, because especially on stocks, because they're just too noisy. The other couple of things that I will bring with me, and maybe not use every day, but I'll want to have at my base camp, are a heavier base layer. This is also from Born Primitive. It just happens to be all the gear that I have currently and have been running. But this is a kind of a dual layer. It has merino wool on the inside, and it's a synthetic outside. That will help manage the moisture a little bit better than just a strict merino layer. And it also, like I said, when you have a synthetic layer next to your skin, a lot of times you will feel that chill as the sweat is evaporating. This kind of alleviates that. It has that merino wool next to your skin, but it is a synthetic outer. So once that moisture makes it through that merino and off of your skin, it gets dissipated and evaporated much quicker on that synthetic outer shell. So when the temperatures really drop, then I will throw this on as my base layer. The last layer I want to talk about is the Quiver Fleece bottoms. This is the grid fleece from Born Primitive. It really helps add a little bit more warmth. You can wear these instead of the ridgeline, or you can wear them over top of the ridgeline depending on the temperatures. Usually I will do one or the other, not both, because I do generally run a little bit warmer and I'm usually going to be hiking, and so doing both is just a little too much for me personally. But that is an option if it does get to those bitterly cold temperatures and you want the extra warmth. Two other things that you may not think about but are super important when it comes to your clothing system is socks and beanies. I prefer a thicker beanie for the late season. It doesn't really matter. I like this one from Peaks. This is a merino wool one. This is an acrylic one from Born Primitive. And this is an orange fleece one from King's Camo. All of those are great options, and because I do sweat a lot, I bring extras so that I can swap them out as they get kind of stinky. Socks. I've actually been running some alpaca wool socks the last couple of years, and I do think that you get about a 10% improvement on warmth with alpaca over the merino, and I'm not sure if it's just the socks or it's actually the alpaca. These ones are a boot sock from a company called Hollow. These ones are brand new to me this year. They're Surrey alpaca socks. Found these online. They feel pretty good. They make a boot sock which is a little bit thicker, and they make just a regular crew sock, which is a little bit thinner. Thinner ones will be for when it's a little bit warmer out. The boot socks I like for two reasons. One, they're taller, so they run up your leg farther and keep your legs warm, and it's easy to slide them down closer to your boot if you're running warm, or pull them up if you're running cold. So a good quality sock is an absolute must. The last thing we wanted to talk about on this video was boot selection. So a couple of boots that I really like, and again, this will kind of depend on how warm your feet run. There's insulated and uninsulated. During this last September, I ran the Brookstalls for most of September. They breathed a little bit more and they were a little bit cooler, so my feet didn't sweat as much in the September warmer hunts. But now that I'm transitioning to later hunts, I am going to go with a full leather boot. These run a little bit warmer because they're all leather. They don't breathe as well, which helps, again, create that microclimate around your foot that helps keep it warm. Couple that with a very warm sock and I can run down to a little bit below freezing and still be fine, especially if I'm doing a lot of hiking. When it gets really cold and we're talking, you know, sub-freezing temperatures, it's not going to get above freezing all day. A lot of times I'll go to a boot that has a little bit of insulation in it. I found that a 200 gram insulation does really well for me until it gets into the single digits. This is a boot from Hanwag, has 200 grams of insulation inside, and when I'm doing these western hunts where I'm active a lot of the time and then sitting and glassing and then moving to the next glassing point trying to find game, I find that the 200 gram works well for me. Sometimes you might think your feet run cold, but it's actually because your feet sweat, and then when you sit down, that moisture causes your feet to get cold. And so you got to balance the amount of effort that you're putting out, whether or not your feet are going to sweat. Make sure you have good socks, and then balance which version of a boot that's going to work best for you in that specific situation. I'm lucky I'm going to be bringing multiple different boots with me, and so I can switch them out each day and or based on the weather. The other thing that I will bring, and this might surprise some of you, are a pair of pack boots. Now these are not going to be ideal for hiking around in, but they are going to keep my feet a lot warmer when it does get down into those single digits, negative temperatures. That's when I'm going to go to these. The warmth trade-off versus the comfort of hiking in them is going to be worth it for me when we get down to those sub-zero temperatures. These are from White's Boots. There's a lot of different companies out there that make these. I've had these for probably close to 20 years now. They're a great boot. Felt liner, keep your feet warm. Something I do with these though is I throw a Super Feet footbed in them. It does improve the comfort of the boot because they are very flexible and not a great hiking boot. But when it gets to be super cold temperatures, that's what I'm going to reach for. I hope this video helps you decide what layers to bring with you on your late season hunts. Till next time, I hope you have an awesome adventure.